Captain Slog, Stardate 25. These are the continued voyages of Ensigns Mark and Eddie as we trek our way through all of Star Trek Season 1. We've finished Season 1!
Okay!
Yeah!
Neutral zone!
Anyway, Mark, how you been?
Yeah, I've been pretty well, man. Lot of ums in here. I don't know. I've had a very pleasant weekend. A very pleasant week. I had a lot of personal things going on. I had an engagement party for myself and my future wife. She was involved. And also my brother and future sister-in-law. Because my mum was like, I'm paying for one engagement party. So get all that in at once. And it was pretty good, man. It was nice meeting my future in-laws who are quite far away, like my future sister-in-law's family.
Okay.
Which is like...
Yeah. You're her brother-in-law. Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
I hate working out family shit. That's why I don't talk to mine. I just can't be bothered with the internal admin.
Yeah, I was trying to explain this to someone, to my fiance's auntie, who's not that much older than we are. I was trying to explain to her, I was like, look, I think I've brought it up on this podcast before. I'm fairly sure I have ADHD. It's never been diagnosed because I'm an adult and the British Health Department just don't give a fuck about adults with ADHD because they're like, it clearly doesn't really affect your everyday life because you've literally been able to survive until the age of 33, so it cannot possibly be that bad. So
yeah.
They don't want to diagnose you. In fact, doctors will tell you, we're not going to do it. You have to go private.
Unless you're trans and they're looking for an excuse to deny you healthcare. In which case they get incredibly... You're autistic? Oh, are you sure you're trans?
Stay out of that bathroom. And I was trying to explain to her, I was like, one of the weird symptoms of ADHD is that, and I said I have to be very careful with my words here, is that there is only room enough in my head to... And I started with give a shit, and then I caught myself, and then I said care, and then I caught myself, and then I was like, there's only enough room in my head to remember and internalize the lives of about 10 people in my immediate vicinity, right? So, to like, what is X up to these days? There's about 10 people that I have that for. Yeah. And my parents, my fiancé, and my sort of smattering of best friends, they always take that up until there's one who maybe I don't see for about 3 months, and then they sort of leave, and then another person might move in. And I was trying to explain this. This story isn't really going anywhere, by the way. It's just I'm trying to get forward a bit of what it's like to live inside Mark's head, and I think I was pretty drunk at the time, so I was like, look, don't, like, if I forget what your job is, it doesn't mean that I don't care about you, and it doesn't mean that you're not interesting. You could literally have the most interesting job in the world, and if I haven't seen you for 3 weeks, I will forget. I mean, I'll forget what your fucking name is, and then I'll forget what your job is. Just because look, there's only a certain amount of hard drive space in my head, and in the new Ghostbusters Ultimate Collection Blu-ray, there is an alternate cut of the original movie with different jokes, and obviously I need to make space to fill my head with that alternate work print.
Does it make me a terrible person that while I am very gutted that due to my current health conditions that I couldn't get up to Glasgow for the party, but the fact that I've just remembered that you have that new version of Ghostbusters makes me want to travel to Glasgow.
Do it. Do it, man. Or I'll bring it down. No, come up here, I'll have a projector. We'll watch it like they would have watched it in 1984. riddled with AIDS.
Well, we can watch it like the cast of Ghostbusters did, on cocaine.
So no, it was really nice, man. It was really nice hanging out with my future family and my past family and all of my friends and all of my brother's friends, and I got so overwhelmed that I spent most of the night going out of my way to not have to speak to anyone because I was so freaked out by what I might say, and spent a lot of time at my engagement party on my own by my own volition. Like I enjoyed that. And I hope I did. I hope I didn't let anyone down by not interacting with them enough, because the sensory overload and the emotional overload for what was happening was too much. Anyway, thanks, Mum, for throwing that engagement party without consulting us. I'm glad to know that all the years where I've been like, can you please not throw me a birthday party because it makes me so stressed that I will get depressed about it, that you've really taken that on board. Did you see there was a guy who this week in the States who
yes, he's my hero.
Yeah. He told his employers, I have anxiety, please don't throw me a birthday party, and they did, and they then fired him for having a panic attack at his own birthday party, and he got 450 grand. Now, I'm not going to sue my parents, but if you're listening to this, Mum, please don't throw me any more parties. I love parties. I love them. I hate parties about me. And God willing, after my wedding, the next one I will have is for my own death.
Just what you do is if you and Laura have kids, just don't tell them when your birthday is. That saves you one. But I can imagine
I think I'd get away with that.
See, here's the thing: an engagement party to me is high fucking stakes. Because I'm one of those people. I need to have like a drink in me to properly loosen up, especially around strangers, which comes from having a childhood where everything I did and said was judged. So I, as a result, to like be on my to have my guard down and like loosen up and be okay being myself around people, I need to have a few drinks. But there's also a very fun version of me, which is a drink or two past that point, which is I have no filter, I'll say whatever pops into my head, which is great for most social circumstances, but not when I'm meeting people who could possibly say to somebody I love, you need to leave that man. Because like there's a part of me, like I want to make this absolutely clear, I'm not a terrible person. But once whilst pissed when my mate's birthday was coming up, I did go on eBay to see if I could track down and buy for him as a birthday present a Jim Fixed It For Me medal. Right? Weirdly hard to get.
Yes, yeah, I feel like we had a very similar childhood, except for the fact that the person who was judging me for everything that I said and did was myself. And those memories would live with me until the present day.
You see, what I did is I spent my entirety of my 20s doing so much drugs and alcohol that I have almost no memory of the trauma that was my childhood. I can remember the names of about 4 school friends and the time I got hit in the eye by the head of Earthworm Jim that my mate Rob accidentally fired at me while we were playing Phantasy Star Online.
I remember that Earthworm Jim figure with the firing head. I actually think I still have that.
It's a great action figure.
Anyway, I mean, just for this one, for anyone who's following along with the production, like mythology of this show, for this one, I think we're completely dropping the pretense that we are 2 guys at 10 forward, right? Like I don't, because last week we tried to lead into it, but we didn't really figure out how it would work. So what we're going to do is before season 2, we're going to go away and we're going to figure out how that works and what this show should actually be, which really is technically the most thematic thing that we could do with Star Trek: The Next Generation. So
and then really nail that format and have it down about the beginning of season 3.
See, season 2 is going to have some greats and some real lows.
Yeah, and then we'll nail that for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And then another 7 years when we do Deep Space Nine. And then really we'll do 7 years of Voyager where I assume we'll just phone it in.
Yeah.
And randomly flick between what we're doing any given week.
I'm
with
fairly
no real
sure that
care for
Measure of a
format.
Man, the episode, is going to have none of that shit. Because that's just going to be 50 minutes of very little talking from Eddie, while I just vomit opinion about how this is one of the most important sci-fi things ever made, and as far as I'm concerned, as good as Star Trek: The Next Generation gets, it will never ever surpass this, and it might be one of the most perfect episodes of television ever made.
And my version of that will be when we reach the episode where Picard gets tortured with the lights, which I feel is the entire ethos of Star Trek laid out in a vehement repudiation of the philosophies of fascism. So
that's Measure of a Man for me, except without the fascism.
Yeah, because Mark doesn't care about fascism.
There's a no, not really, not as it pertains to androids. There's a it fucking bugs me that you still haven't watched it. There is an incredible four lights joke in Lower Decks. When a character's being tortured but he's totally cool about it, and the other character comes in and says, "Hey, you doing all right?" And he goes, they keep showing me these four lights. I don't get it. It's real good.
Okay, so let's this episode is, like we said, it's the last one of season 1.
Yeah,
and it's weird. It's kind of okay.
I liked it.
I don't know if that's Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
From the rest of season 1.
It's a lot of that came from me just being happy that it's over. It lays some groundwork. Well, I guess we'll get into it. It lays some groundwork for season 5 of Voyager or something.
It lays some groundwork. Okay. It lays some groundwork, and I was genuinely not sure. So the plot of this episode is a bunch of outposts haven't been responding. So Picard has to go to an emergency conference because that's a thing. They turn up and they're on the edge of the neutral zone, so they think it's the Romulans. And then the Romulans turn up and they're like, "Oh, that's been happening to us as well." And there's a B plot with some frozen people. But
I disagree.
This is what I was curious about, because when I saw this episode, I remember watching this episode at the time. I didn't remember that it was the finale of season 1, and I kind of got it into my head that this was. I thought this might have initially been a follow-up to last week's episode, because they're like, oh, they've been sending a broadcast to the little insects were sending a broadcast to deep space, and I thought, oh, maybe that was who they were going to say destroyed the colonies, and then they fucked that off to lean into who it turned out to be, which is, spoilers, it's the Borg.
It's the Borg that'll do it. Yeah, but it's not the Borg. We literally, well, it is the Borg. We apparently, so I looked into this. Because this one, there's a good reason why we couldn't be in character for this, because there's a lot of behind the scenes shit that happened on this episode, very production-y things. Yeah. Apparently the plot thread of this episode won't be picked up until later days Voyager. Chakotay is the guy who is the character who picks up on this story, right? So the Laura turned round to me when we were watching this episode, and it got to maybe probably about 50 minutes in, and Laura has to listen to a lot of my nonsense and backseat driving when it comes to television production. So I guess, and as well as having her own knowledge about how things work and how things are made and how stories are written and things. Genuinely one of my proudest moments, because I've obviously filled her head with so much fucking nonsense, is that she turned around to me about 50 minutes into this episode and played, I mean, they know that you can't have two A-plots, right? That's not how stories operate. That's...
Yeah. So yeah, because the other plot, which is a co-A plot, I guess, is that
I would argue that is the A plot.
But also, it's stuff that doesn't. So they find a satellite, and it's got 3 guys, some cryo tubes on it from like modern day, so like 1987 ish.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. So that has ended up near the edge of the neutral zone.
Yeah.
Which I want to be clear on this.
Quite
It
far
can't
away.
possibly have done.
Nope.
In the amount of time. And they find 3 people are frozen and dead. So they pick them up. They take a Data's like, oh, we should take them back. And then like later on, Picard tries to give him shit about it. He's like, we've got some stuff going on. This is more important. And they were dead. And he's like, well, it seemed like we should bring them back and like maybe give them a proper burial, sort of thing. And like is it like the right thing to do? Picard was like, they're not going to get more dead. And then at that point they're alive again, and this is my favourite line of this entire episode, because they've been revived, they've had their medical issues fixed, and they're alive. And Picard says, they're alive now, so I suppose we have to treat them as if they were living human beings. Which, again, they are. Mm-hmm. You don't...
So, apparently, the writing of this episode coincided with the 1988 writer's strike.
Yeah.
And so when a writer's strike happens, if you're listening to this, you're likely going to be this roughly the same age as Eddie and I. So you probably remember the 2007 writer's strike, which kind of fucked up a lot of shows. It affected
specifically
things like
Heroes.
Heroes, yeah, exactly. Why is that Irish chick being left in a future that doesn't exist anymore and all that? It fucked up a lot of like Supernatural. Basically anything that came out in 2007. If you have a DVD box set where you notice that one season is noticeably shorter, it's likely that was the 2007 season. And during a writer's strike, obviously everyone in Hollywood works as a whole, right? Or Vancouver, as it is. So even though the writers are on strike, the rest of the crew, in what I could only imagine for Gene Roddenberry was begrudging solidarity, you are not allowed to touch the script.
Yeah. And
one of the writers, from what I understand, had about a day and a half after. I'm pretty pissed, but again, I think the writer had a day and a half to put this together, maybe after the strike ended.
And it's based, because of that, they literally... So they needed the framework and everything sorted, so they grabbed an online fan story and basically ripped it off on the grounds.
It wouldn't have been online, I guess, at the time.
Yeah, I don't know. Early days of the internet, 87, probably on like a Usenet or...
No, surely not
like
even
that.
back then.
Yeah, so God knows where. It's like a fan story.
Like a fanzine or something, maybe?
Yes, and I think they basically worked on the principle, we can steal this, contact these people and give them a writer's fee. And I'm sure that combined with we made your story into an episode will be fine.
Yeah, this episode has a very bizarre writer credit. Because it has a written by based on a story by.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. It's an odd one because I tried to look up the 2 people it was a co-written fan story, and I was trying to look up who those people were, but there's no sign of them online, sort of outside of this. So this didn't turn into like a regular gig for them, unfortunately. And I was kind of like, oh, did they? Because this was supposed to be a 2-parter, but ended up being truncated down to it. I just want to say to anybody involved in the writers' strike of 1987, thank you. Thank you for making season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation at least 1 episode shorter, and
also thank you for presumably getting better workers' conditions, but that is very much a secondary advantage of what you did.
Actually, it's not even secondary, it's tertiary, because secondary is that it meant that the Borg was supposed to be in this as a 2-parter, and they didn't get put in it, which means that by the time the Borg were introduced, they were being handled by better writers.
Yeah.
So that's secondary. And then tertiary is whatever extra rights you procured for, presumably people who work reasonably hard.
Writers were able to sit down while they typed or something. I don't know, man. It's
Yeah.
yeah, because writers' strikes are always for very bizarre things. Because writers don't really work the way that anyone else works.
Yeah.
So that they can't really get, as a man who fancies himself a writer and who one day wants to be a writer, writers' strikes are always for almost ethereal fucking
Yeah.
demands.
Like we want to be officially credited on digital works.
Yeah.
Right.
We want to be able to use both hands at once.
Knowing what I know about how like fan fiction works as well, I'm guessing the people who came up with this story were the people who got unfrozen in the future in the initial story, and I'm guessing also had some array of superpowers.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Here's, by the way, we were just talking about this little part of production. Here's an interesting story. So, did you know that if you want to write for a show, you write a spec script, and a spec script is you write a script. You're just a nobody, so you write a script and you send it to a show. Yeah. You are never allowed to submit. Well, you are allowed, but no one's going to pick up on. You cannot write a spec script for the actual show that you want to write for, because the producers are never going to read it, because then they are in the position that if there's any ideas in your script that later shows up, they could get sued for plagiarism. So if you want to write for a show, the advice is write a script for a similar show and post it in. One of the most famous examples of this happening is with the show 30 Rock.
Yeah.
Where Donald Glover, Childish Gambino himself, wrote a spec script for The Simpsons and sent it into 30 Rock. Tina Fey read this and thought it was incredible. And that's how he got hired on 30 Rock, which is like his kind of start in the industry. But the fact train doesn't stop there, my friend. Number one, in high school, he was voted most likely to write for The Simpsons, which he never has, but technically that's what got him started. And number two, the reason he got hired is that there was a diversity initiative at NBC for hiring minority writers, which was its own fund. So he wrote this incredible script for The Simpsons, which got to Tina Fey, who then brought him in as a writer for 30 Rock and literally got him on the show for free. There was no budget that went to paying Donald Glover because he just got it off of this like discretionary fund.
That is my second favourite Donald Glover fact. My first favourite being, do you know where the name Childish Gambino comes from?
No.
The name Childish Gambino comes from an online random Wu-Tang Gang name generator that him and his friends were sat around using, and it popped out like, what's going to be your name? And he put it in, it came up Childish Gambino, and he was like, that's actually brilliant.
Great. And then do you remember the day in, what was it, 2014, when we all woke up to the news that the This Is America video has dropped, and we were like, well, I guess it was a bit, obviously, look, this is a show produced by and listened to exclusively by white men in their 30s. White men in their 30s who like to think that they're quite woke. And so it's a bit like when Get Out came out, and we all congratulated each other on, my God, how things have changed. When we contributed nothing, except for celebrating in the you know, in the joys of someone who actually put the fucking work in.
When he gunned down the choir, I lost my shit. But, speaking about times changing, Mark, of the three people who get unfrozen, there's a housewife, a country music star, and a capitalist. Who do you reckon has the best life going forward? That's my question for you.
I wrote down in my notes. I think homemaker would be a more recognisable job in the 24th century than financier. So
Yeah.
it's bizarre that Picard was like, what does that mean? The musician.
Yeah, the musician.
Who is my favourite character all of Star Trek.
Here's my thing on the musician, right? This guy's like a 400-year-old musician. Nobody remembers any of his works. If you came up to me tomorrow and said, hey, Eddie, I've got tickets to a gig. Do you want to come? What's the gig? Right. They found this lute player from medieval times, frozen in ice, and they've unthawed him, and he's going to be playing us some of the biggest hits of 400 years ago. I'd be like, fuck yes, I want to go to that. That seems like the most interesting social experience I could possibly have.
But to add to that, they were like, but there's another level of it. They unfroze him yesterday. And he was immediately cool with the scenario that had been presented to him. And in fact, is so cool with it that earlier today for his breakfast, he went to McDonald's and ordered a McMuffin. And no one thought anything of it, apart from the fact that when he picked it up, he went, oh, like no one ever has. He was weirdly impressed by this.
The level of so I think you can judge the reactions of the three characters by the only measurable standard for unfreezing, which is Futurama, which is the homemaker very much has a Philip J. Fry situation. Where they're like, oh look, we found an answer, like one of the descendants of you, 400 years down the line. Which you'd be like, if you like you didn't have kids, would you look up the descendants of like? It'd be weird to turn up and be like, look, here's the deal. You don't know me, but I'm just getting in touch with you over space email. I got unfrozen yesterday, and I was very good friends with your great grandfather, and it seems therefore likely that you're one of the few people in this time period who might have a similar sense of humour to me. Can we hang out?
I'm literally terrified to speak to my own nieces and nephews today.
Here's another question I have for you, Mark, because this is like they look up this woman's like family and like find out what's going on. And like I say, I was going to compare these. Like that's she has the Philip J. Fry. The country singer handles this like bender, as in he immediately asks for a drink, and it's just fine and accepts it. And the financier handles it much like Leela would, which is just fury and panic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't look up my own family if I woke up thousands of years in the future. First of all, the first thing I would look up would be, of course, what further entries there were in the MCU.
The first thing I would look up is what were we right with GameStop? Was it just a cult?
I wouldn't look up people I like. That's the thing I realised, because I don't care. Like if you lived a good, because there's two things. If I look up somebody I like, I'm going to either find out that they had a horrible death.
Yeah.
Or they had a nice-ish death and kids and family. There's nothing really good about it. I would look up the people I fucking hate. There's nothing that would bring me more joy than be sat at that computer just typing in names, just going, boom. Oh! Turned out Jacob Rees-Mogg was a paedophile. Fantastic.
What happened to J.K. Rowling? That's what I want to know. Like, but the people that I would want to know about, I think a big issue is that they're often tied to the people that I don't want to know about. Like I wouldn't want to look up Zelensky, because in my head I'm like, in the 21st century where everything is terrible 100% of the time, having an actual good man not only be the head of a country but take a country to fucking war and be just history's toppest, be modern history's toppest lad. Yeah. I don't want, like, obviously it's been 300 years, he is dead. I don't want to know. Like, but I guess that same thing would happen. But at the same time, through
conversation, like you're standing there and like you say something and somebody in the room just goes, check out the Zelenskys on this guy. And you're like,
Nice. But I guess it'd be the same thing as if you were born. If let's say you were a time traveler from, and I'm gonna get the years wrong here, right? But you follow along with me. If you were, say, frozen in 18, let's just take a fucking stab. Maybe it'll be right. 1867, right? Okay. And you were brought back in 2022, and someone said in Idaho, no, in let's pick a good one, Vermont, right? You were brought back in Vermont, and someone said to you, "Here's," and again, might get this wrong, "Here's $20. Go and buy yourself an outfit from Old Navy," and you look at it and you go, "Oh, Lincoln's on the money. Must have been good for him." And then you're like, I'm not going to look any further into that. But then at the same time, would you want to know? Would someone be like, "Oh, he got shot in the back of the head in a theatre by an actor"?
But he did free the slaves, so yeah.
Yeah.
There is a bit in this as well where Riker's talking to Data about like the people from the past and like their behaviour. And he says, "It makes you wonder how our species survived." Well, I've got good news for you, Riker. It's not something you have to worry about. It's not going well. Our odds of making it to 2364,
not great.
Slim to none.
Exactly. Because if the bombs don't get us, climate change certainly will. So
well, apparently, TV dies out in 2040, which is. I would love to know what TV show has a finale so bad that everybody stops watching TV.
How I Met Your Father.
Yeah.
Imagine Hilary Duff is the one to bring down an entire medium. Because Hilary Duff, I like Hilary Duff. I think. I don't know, I never watched Lizzie McGuire, right? But I've looked at a lot of pictures of Hilary Duff online. And Hilary Duff is like, when you go to the dictionary and you go to the definition of the word 9, there is the number between 8 and 10. German for no, and Hilary Duff. And I think that, look, I don't know Hilary Duff, and if Hilary Duff wants to guest on this podcast, I don't know, maybe she's a big Star Trek fan. I think that Hilary Duff's entire career, and look, I'm talking from an early age. I'm talking from Casper Meets Wendy, right? I'm talking from 11 onwards. Hilary Duff's entire, and I'll put it in, and you know what? I'll put this out there in like a suable fashion. I will say this. This isn't just my opinion. As far as I am concerned, this is the truth. And if you want this Hilary Duff, you can get me. Hilary Duff's entire career in life has been absolutely devoted to the science of what it means to be a hard 10. Because as a hard 9, she will just never understand. And no one can explain. She's been to multiple psychologists over the years, all of them men in their 30s. All of whom who grew up on Lizzie McGuire. And she'll say, "Matt," they're all called Matt. She'll say, "Matt, look at me." She'll stand there, fully nude, right? In whatever position. She'll have looked them up. She'll have gone online. She'll have searched their name on Facebook and Instagram and all these things. She will have got Anonymous to fucking hack into their internet searches. She'll know what they went for, right? She'll know exactly that fucking thing that they like, right? That thing that really does it for them, man. That button, man. We all have a button. We all have a button that takes someone from an X to an X, right? We'll have that button. She'll know what that button is for every fucking psychologist, every therapist he's ever been for. She shows up at the therapy office and she is that. And the first question she asks, "Give me a number out of 10," and every single one of them will say 9. She has no idea, mate. She has no idea. What is that extra thing that she has to do to take her from a 9 to a 10 is so unattainable to her that it will drive her so mad that she will literally destroy the entire medium of television in a quest. That's what destroys television.
The Duff incident, as it's known.
Yes. The Duff. And 3 years later, there will be what's called the Duff Inquiry. Which is the first time that... Remember in the first... Remember in the... What was it called? The Far Reach Experiment? What the fuck was the first episode of this called? Sorry, I've drunk a full bottle of wine.
Encounter at Far Point.
Remember your ones with the cocaine machines?
Oh, yeah.
That's what turns lawyers into them.
A lot of people don't know, but there was a very similar thing happened to the end of like radio as a serious medium. That was the Tunguska incident, where a former child actor whose voice was a hard 9, Hilary Tunguska, finally went off, and if you know anything about that, flattened all of the trees for I think 100 miles. And since then, no one's taken radio seriously, except for comedians trying to get a BBC pilot.
In Ghostbusters, at the very end, just after my fourth favourite joke in Ghostbusters, which is "Who does your taxes?" I have a list. Ray Stan says the Tunguska blast of 1909, but the Tunguska blast actually happened in 1908. And I like to think that it's a character flaw of Ray's rather than a mistake in that script, because there are no mistakes in that script.
I see, the thing is, and this is something that I adhere to, is that Ray is referring to something different, because the Tunguska incident is usually referred to as the Tunguska incident, not the Tunguska blast. So I choose to believe that there is a second like, I imagine that Ray's in the sort of circles where well, everybody knows what caused the Tunguska incident. It was a dark matter collision. Yeah. But the Tunguska blast, that happened about
Someone didn't play their dilithium license.
People are unaware of the Tunguska blast because it happened in the exact same area and therefore had very little effect.
By the way, we're 38 minutes in, man. If you're still listening to this, congratulations, because we don't give a fuck about this episode. The way that the writers didn't give a shit about it either. We're just like, the format's going to change next time.
I give a fuck about exactly one thing in this episode, and that is that one of the Romulans is played by Mark Alamo, who hopefully will be devoting a lot of time to in the distant future, because he plays Golda Cott, who is... This sentence is going to sound really bad if anybody ever takes it out of context, but Golda Cott is my favourite space Nazi. Right? He might be... I genuinely mean this. He might be the best written villain in the history of fiction. And I know that sounds mental and extreme, but when we get to Deep Space Nine, and Mark's not watched any Deep Space Nine if you're listening to this, so I am so excited for Mark to come. Because Mark, I'll give you a little...
There's one person and one person only that I know for a fact listens to this podcast, and it's my fiancée Laura. And I'm sure that at the moment she is literally on a bus on the way to work. And when she heard you use the best written... What was it? The best written villain in the history of fiction?
History of fiction,
I'm sure that she literally went like this. And Laura, I know that you can see the physical actions you did when I say that. She went, what? There was a lot of shoulder movement there.
Yeah, and the level to which I will happily stand by that, he's amazing. He's a cunt. He might be the worst person ever written. Let me make this absolutely clear. He is the leader of the Cardassian race, who are a race of space Nazis who have just finished a Holocaust-like occupation of the planet of Bajor. That's how his character is introduced, Mark, and he gets worse.
I legit don't know who I think is the worst villain in the history of fiction. It's not Gozer the Gozerian. it goes to the Gozerian is a very incidental plot point.
He's not the main. The main villain of Ghostbusters is the EPA guy, because Dan Aykroyd's mental and has more of a problem with environmental regulations than he does interdimensional destruction.
Yeah. I have no idea. I don't know. Yeah. But that's a good take.
Do you notice
so
how
fucking drunk?
I was going to say, Mark, did you notice how nobody in of the 3 people who get revived, right? None of them actually have an arc.
No.
The housewife is sad.
The musician guy fancies Data.
Yeah, and wants him to he wants him to go on the pool with him, and he words it in possibly the most offensive way ever, so I'm not going to repeat it. But his whole thing is I'm going to go to Earth and play country music. That's fine. He's immediately says it. And the finance guy, eventually he gets onto the bridge and he's the Romulans don't know shit. I know that because I negotiate finance deals. And then they at no point do they sit him down and explain to him that he wakes up and the things he wants are he wants a newspaper,
a phone call to Geneva.
A phone call, and he wants his capitalism back. And I'm so sad that in the year 2022, of those 3 things, the ones we've gotten rid of are newspapers and phone calls.
How did you feel about the fact that the and I don't know whether this was a victim of the same writer strike problem that had Picard not give a fuck about 3 20th century people that they found, in direct violation of literally the fucking opening credits of this TV show, to find new life and new civilizations, to not be in fact, if I remember correctly, there is literally a line in this episode which is about Picard not being curious. No, it's Data to Riker, isn't it? It's Data says to Riker, there's potentially people on that ship. Should we not go and get them? Is that kind of not what we do? And Riker's like, nah, just Captain will be here in 5 minutes. Just leave it, mate. Sorry. There's two instances in that, which is isn't what you do literally to go out there and explore, and 2, why the fuck are the Federation sending you to the edge of the neutral zone, the flagship?
Yeah,
it's not about bonkers.
If it's not only baked into the nature of Starfleet that this is exactly the sort of shit they should be interested in, but Picard's one defining hobby is history and archaeology.
Yeah.
And the thing is, other than that one big misstep, this episode I think nails Picard better than he's ever been nailed. He does an anti-Kirk this episode, where the whole thing is he doesn't shoot someone.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It just holds his nerve, and it's really cool. And he does his speeches, and he does a proper Picard thing. It's really awesome. And Troy's good in this episode as well. I
like Troy a lot in this episode. Yeah.
She reads Picard the Wikipedia page on the Romulans.
Fun fact: in the non-HD version of this episode, when Troy goes to see the housewife with the husband Dawn, who Laura and I were like, that's definitely Trump's wife. In the original broadcast version of the episode, the first 6 names on the family tree are the first 6 actors who played the Doctor on Doctor Who.
Oh, nice.
But they had to change it when they went to HD because people would see it. And it didn't make any sense that William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton had a baby.
Well, that's just bigotry. They can have a baby if they want to. Yeah. Jesus Christ, imagine if you had to look into the historical records and you went into cryosleep in 1987, right? And you woke up in the year 2364. I'm gonna make a bold claim, right? This is a time period that includes the human race meeting alien life, the discovery of faster than light travel, and
instantly printable guitars.
And the end of capitalism and the ushering in of a post-scarcity socialist utopia. There is still nothing in the historical database that is going to be as mental as the Trump presidency. Like when that comes up, when you go, oh, who are the list of presidents, and they list them off, and they get to Trump, and you're like, I'm sorry, I'm from 1987. Who the fuck did you just say?
We will never. Like, there's literally a joke in Back to the Future about Reagan being the president. And apparently, so that if you've never seen Back to the Future, why the fuck are you listening to this podcast? How are you even our friend? There's a joke.
How are you alive?
Yeah. What have you been asleep every Good Friday? Forever. Does your county not get ITV2 or something? So there's a joke in Back to the Future, which is Marty runs to see Doc in 1955, and Doc says, "Who is the president in 1985?" To which Marty replies, "Ronald Reagan." Now, our generation doesn't really understand why that's funny, until later in life when we realise why, because we have empathy and we can understand history and things. Like, when I was a kid, I didn't understand why that's funny. The actor. Who's the vice president? Jerry Lewis? Like that was like such an incredible joke that when Back to the Future screened at the White House, Ronald Reagan apparently laughed so hard he asked the projectionist to run back the film. Which, if anyone who's listening to this has ever worked as a projectionist, is very fucking difficult. It took a lot of effort just for what I imagine was Ronald Reagan the second time round going, yeah, that's right, they did say that, didn't they?
It's weird.
But that is good. I enjoyed that. Thank you very much. But yeah, it's what the fuck was I talking about?
It's the equivalent of
Trump's
like
president. It's,
I'm
so fucking drunk. Sorry, man. I'm starting to feel like I've ruined this episode.
No, this is what we should do. This for the finale of each season. Get hammered. I'm the one letting us down. Is it okay? I got one thing I do want to bring up. Have I? I got so written down.
I've got written down.
Oh, okay.
We're about to wake up these 20th century people. Who are the best officers to have here? Oh yeah, the android and the Klingon.
Yeah, seeing a Klingon make somebody pass out, which is perfectly acceptable. But this is something I want to bring up, right, Mark? I am not an intelligent man. I freely admit
this. That's not fair.
But what I would say is,
I think you're quite smart. Shut up, Eddie. Don't fuck up. No, listen. If you're listening to this, can you fuck off for 5 minutes? Eddie, don't put yourself down like that, man. Like I don't want to fuck. Look, shut the. Look, everyone, can you just leave us alone for a couple minutes, mate? I don't want to get fucking weird about this, man. But like, I wouldn't. I don't know if it's fair to say I wouldn't fucking hang out with you like the way that I do if I didn't think you were fucking intelligent. That's not to say that like I wouldn't hang out with people that I didn't think are intelligent. That's not fair. No, look, if you're listening to this and you have and you think in your head, I'm less intelligent than Mark. No, that's not. Oh fuck! I've dug myself a fucking hole here. I think that you're fucking smart, man.
I want to say for those listening, thanks, Mark. I needed that because you didn't get to hear the conversation beforehand, and given recent events, I spent a significant portion of today thinking that I'm fairly certain that my dog doesn't love me. So I needed that pick me up. That helped. But what I was gonna say was, here's what I was gonna say is, if you put me in a room that has a working replicator in it, and I can see that the replicator is working, I would be able to work out from that piece of technology alone that capitalism was over.
Yeah.
If you can't work out how having food and drink water on demand for no cost means capitalism ceases to function, then you don't understand literally anything. So it's weird to me that the financier in this episode does spend the rest of the episode still certain. Although he does say his money's in Geneva, and maybe Switzerland's still... wouldn't it be great if Switzerland remained neutral? Like the rest of the Earth had all gotten together and like Switzerland is just dealing with the Ferengis.
So the musician lad, something that I really liked, because it spoke to a very personal experience of mine. The first thing that he orders is like a Kansas City steak.
Yeah.
With, what is it, asparagus and mash or something?
And greens.
And a mess of greens.
Yeah.
And then I saw a lot of myself in him. Because, like, there is... Look, I don't know. If you meet me in the pub, right? I don't know if we'll ever talk about it on this podcast. There is a part of my life that occurs in Kansas City, Missouri. And the one thing that I will be more than willing to talk about to fucking anyone is the food. And genuinely, man, Kansas City meat is the best. Kansas City barbecue is the best food. If you're from, I don't know, what are the other places that claim they have great barbecue? Kentucky, you have chicken or whatever.
Ohio, I think, because JR, the wrestling commentator, was from there, and he does barbecue.
And then he immediately is just like, no, make me a martini instead. I saw a lot of myself in him.
Yeah. I like the fact that he got a replicated guitar, and then immediately must have either asked for the guitar with some country stickers on it, or after getting the guitar replicated was like, oh, this guitar looks naked. Slap some stickers on.
So apparently in the original draft of the episode, Wesley was to make him the guitar.
Oh, right.
And then your man was to play some riffs and say, oh, this is rock and roll, or this is a blues, to Wesley, who's a teenager, who should be reasonably expected to recognise those music.
Oh, God.
And he doesn't recognise it, and so your man was to make a quip about how teenagers in the 24th century, I guess, must be very different. Because that guy, imagine that guy is the fucking wokest guy in Star Trek, and I'll put that on the fucking record. That guy wakes up on the 24th century, and is so immediately on board with everything that's happening, including the fact that his best friend is an android. That guy is the wokest guy in Star Trek. And from now on, I want to learn his name, because Star Trek obviously is very woke, right? That's kind of its thing. I think that the measure of how woke Star Trek is should be measured against that one dude who comes here from... And this is something I was going to say earlier on. They have actually figured out what year he must have come from, because he specifically mentions the Braves not doing very well. And from the early 90s, the Braves start doing incredibly well. So he has to be from, like, pre-1995.
Right. I was going to say, this episode brings us some fucking troubling things about the future, Mark. So, right, TV's not a thing.
Yeah.
Fine. Whatever. I'm assuming what they actually mean is they stream everything. But,
yeah.
It's like, oh, you mean YouTube? But
so
no.
Steph's packed lunch isn't on anymore. What do we do between 12:30 and 2:30?
Okay. So, but TV's, but also, like, rock and country didn't make it, but fucking jazz did. Right, that can fuck off. But also, competitive sports didn't make it. Because I know from Enterprise that water polo is still a thing by the time we first get into space. Because weirdly, that's the sport that Archer watches. But it's weird that, like, none of them, we didn't make, like, I don't like baseball. Braves is baseball, right, isn't it?
Yeah, the Braves are baseball. The World Series.
I want to bring this up because if you're an American, you listen to this, which is unlikely. I need to bring something about baseball because I only recently found this out. You know how they slag off cricket for like taking like 5 days to play because a game of baseball only takes 1 day, but all games between two teams are decided as a 1st to 7 series.
Yeah.
That means a game of baseball takes 7 days minimum. Don't pretend that each game is just one. It's 7 days of your time to find out who the fucking winner is. Don't shit on cricket for being fine.
First of all, cricket can fuck off because it's a fucking tan sport for cunts. I will support baseball. Now, I will say, in the future, it is like if we were to lose sports, it's very likely that we will lose American football. because eventually there will come a generation who's just like, yeah, the injuries that we're given to ourselves are so great that there's no point continuing. Into the future, I think the sports that are going to continue are football, aka association football, aka soccer, and baseball, because baseball. I'm not the biggest fan of baseball. I like baseball, but baseball is the most cinematic sport.
Sports, I think
apart
there'll be
from
new sports.
Basketball, specifically in Space Jam.
I was going to say certain sports would get better because
Yeah.
basketball would be better if you could like play it in low G.
Nah, see, they've already tried that in real life. Have you never heard of slam ball?
Oh yeah, with the trampolines.
Yeah, well, they
everyone
put
got
4
horrifyingly
trampolines.
injured.
Yeah.
The one sport I reckon that I will never die. I genuinely was thinking about this. Is the only is I think weirdly professional wrestling will last because professional wrestling will last as long as Vince McMahon wills it to, and I genuinely believe he's going to turn out to be immortal. The man sleeps for like 3 hours a day, and he's in the gym at like 4 a.m. Like 3 a.m. he's in the gym working out, and he can lift like 1,000 pounds, and he's in his 80s, and he had a match at WrestleMania this year, Mark, and it was not good, but it was very entertaining.
He actually, for people our age who are PC gamers, he actually sued the makers of Fallout 1 because the master at the end of Fallout 1 is so obviously Vince McMahon. That's not true, I made that up.
But it's entirely plausible.
Yeah. You believed it for a minute, didn't you? Fuck me. This episode, it was fine. I like the fucking fan aspect of it. Like the 3 people waking up on the Enterprise. That's like genuinely interesting and like very Star Trek. And the Romulans showing up and there being a setup for the Borg, like that was interesting, and it was very Star Trek. The problem with this episode, and it comes down to, and it really highlights what it means to have competent fucking writers on your staff, is that there are 2 things, because this story has 2 A plots, as we established earlier, and both of those A plots are enough to have their own episode. They squeeze them into one episode, and the fucking problem with this episode is that the characters that we already know and love couldn't relate to or deal with them in the way that we expect them to as fans, and that's the fucking problem with the writer's strike.
And because they had the 2 A plots, they were desperate to intertwine them in a way that seemed reasonable. So there's a minor, tiny interaction between the 2 plots at the end, which really doesn't serve. Basically, one of the characters gets on the bridge and says, "Those Romulans are hiding. They don't know what they're saying," which literally could have just been a line of dialogue given to Troy.
Yeah.
And it would have been fine.
Literally famous for their hiding something.
It's literally the only purpose this episode really serves is to say, hey, guys, we made a mistake. You're right. The Ferengi aren't a major threat. Look, the Romulans are back. Is that okay? Literally, the Romulans say, we're back.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what this episode is here to do. Go, look, here's a Romulan warbird. Isn't it a pretty ship? One of my favourite ships, to be honest with you. I love a Romulan warbird.
Beautiful ship. Yeah.
Beautiful ship. That's it. That's the only reason this episode exists. How would you feel if, like, we said, like an ancestor showing you don't want to talk to your nieces, but how would you deal with that in, like, a Star Trek scenario? Like, somebody knocks on your door and says, hey, I got unfrozen. You're my last living relative. Would you be like, oh, you can stay here? Or would you be like,
yeah, 100%. I've got a spare bedroom. I live in Glasgow. I imagine. Well, because I don't really get along with a lot of my current living relatives, who live in the same world as I do. I mean, I guess it would be like, have you seen the Seth Rogen movie An American Pickle?
No, but I know the premise.
No one did. It's actually pretty good. I had a lot of fun with it. It'd be a bit like that. It would be a bit like, hey, well, welcome, because I guess they're from Glasgow. Because my granddad Like my dad's dad always claimed that he was Irish, but he's from fucking Maryhill, man. He's from Glasgow, and he has been for generations. So I imagine that they'd be like Glaswegian shipbuilders. So they'd be like, oh, so I don't even know. Like they'd be like, what do you do of a day? And I'd be like, well, in the 24 hours there are of a day, I have through my own I put down my own achievements. Look, I'm fucking drunk, all right. So I'm gonna get in a fucking rant here. I have I tend to put down my own achievements, but for all of the work that I've put in over the last 10 years of what I do for a fucking job, I've managed to get myself down to a solid 12 hours of work every week, right? And the rest of the time, I spend just leisure time and research and fucking about. And they'd be like, whoa, this is incredible. And I'd be like, thanks, man. But they wouldn't understand what the fuck I was talking about. So, no, I'd let them stay here, but they would need to understand that we are too far apart on the spectrum. I don't know.
So here's the thing, you say that, but I think if somebody turned up and they were from 400 years ago, it's nice to be able to talk to people from your own time and relate to them, but it's also really great to be like around someone who's going to be impressed by the fact that I own more than one spoon. Are you a king? And then I'll be like, you think that's mental? Sit down, strap in, we're going to watch Star Wars.
I could do that to someone who was like not a distant ancestor, but like my dad's uncle. Who was frozen, because my girlfriend and I, my fiance Laura is like a huge fan of Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
And I love the new ones. I think they're genuine, absolute masterpieces. But I've never really seen the older ones. But she's a big fan of the older ones. And I do like to, as much as I shit on everyone's opinion of what they enjoy, because I don't know why that makes me feel like a big man. If anything, it pushes people away. And I really need to get a grip on that part of my personality. I don't know why it makes me feel good to downplay other people's opinions. And anyway, so we watched the original Planet of the Apes, and in my head I was like, please do your best to take this for what it is and enjoy it and look at it as maybe as an historical document, and you know, think about it from the time and think about it from when Laura was a little girl and when she enjoyed it and like what joy it brought to her and the ideas that it cultivated in her head, the way that maybe my children will watch season 1 of The Next Generation and be like, okay, I kind of get it, like this is fun, but we have different things now. And immediately as soon as the credits rolled on Planet of the Apes, I turned around to Laura and I went, I like that, but I understand why people were fucking blown away by Star Wars. Like in my head, I already knew 77 Star Wars coming out was a seminal moment in Hollywood, and now I understand why.
And I just want to say, because Laura is listening to this, I had a genuine 5 to 6 year period in which the original Charlton Heston Planet of the Apes was my favourite movie.
Nice.
What happened was I loved it, and then the remake came out with Mark Wahlberg in it, and I hated that movie so much it ruined Planet of the Apes for me. So what I did is I bumped up my second favourite movie of all time to number 1, which was The Italian Job. As you can imagine, for quite some time after some later events, I had a very big problem with Mark Wahlberg.
And you're not even Vietnamese?
I think that's where we should leave it.
Yeah, I agree.
Join
anyway,
us for season 2.
Apologies to everyone for this one. Apologies to you, most of all. Apologies to Laura. Apologies to... Is it Willis? Gillies? Sorry,
Gilly.
man. I've let you down, man.
This is the best one we've done so far, in my opinion.
We'll see about that.
Okay. Right.
Bye.
Bye.
No, bye.